Hello and welcome to The Wrap, thanks to Coates. I'm Laura Spurway, I'm here with Kate McCarthy. And Kate, well, this has been a round of upsets. It was bound to happen at some point. We've gone from 4 undefeated sides to just 1.
Yeah, well, I got 9 out of 9 on the tips this weekend. I'm not sure about everyone else. I absolutely did not. I absolutely bombed out. Let's have a look, though, at the results of the round because there were some huge upsets. Obviously, it started with the first game of the round with the Pies, getting the job done over the Swans. And then Melbourne, they got defeated. So we have no more undefeated sides in the competition, Laura. We have one more, of course, North. I'm not even counting them as part of this competition anymore because they're
in their own
absolutely
league.
Too good. They should be in their own league. And just the one team still without a win. So Richmond couldn't quite get the job done over Geelong. So, like I said, a tipster's nightmare this round.
Absolute mare for most of us. Well, let's get to that grand final rematch because, well, North, they've done it again. They've made history because no grand final winner has ever won the grand final rematch, but they've done it against the Lions.
They certainly have. And as I said earlier, they are the only team that's left undefeated this season. 17th win in succession, 19 games without a loss, if you include that draw, obviously, last season with Geelong. Jenna Bruton kicked 2 goals. Jazz Garner, so she was supposed to be out for 2 to 4 weeks, came back after a week, had 24 disposals, 7 clearances, 9 tackles and a goal. She's superhuman. She cannot be human the way that she plays her football. And they were pretty clinical. They got the job done on the inside. They beat the Lions at the contest and then were able to really spread and outwork them and win the uncontested possessions. But yeah, they dominated inside 50s and they won disposals but also won the tackle count. So they were up for the fight.
They're going to take some beating, I tell you what. And this play we want to talk about, well, she's been one of our new kids on the block, but she is not playing like a new kid on the block. Blaheen Bogue, take another bow.
Yeah, she is someone that's come into this competition. Obviously, this is her first season playing and sort of have highlighted her, I would say, most weeks on this program because she's kicked multiple goals most weeks. She comes into this team. We speak about the resume of North Melbourne and how they've won 17 games in a row. Well, she didn't feature last season. And if you can add a player that comes in and is now leading your goal-kicking ranks, if we have a look at the leading goal kicker for the competition overall, Chloe Molloy's still sitting on the top, but Blaheen Bogue, 11 goals. Then you've got Kate Hall with 10, Jazz Garner 9, Talia Randall with 8. So 3 of the top 5 are Kangaroos. But I wouldn't think many people at the start of the season would have told you that it would have been Blaheen Bogue that was leading the North Melbourne leading goal kickers and only one off the leader with Chloe Molloy. So she's been really ultra impressive. I love the way that the Irish girls play their football. They are unstoppable. They put their name on a footy. They earn the right to win the ball, but then their explosiveness, and she personifies that, her ability to exit the contest, exit with the footy, and then her cleanliness in front of goal as well. Those 3 goals that we saw, I've not seen many Irish players in their first season of football kick a drop punt as technically correct as that. So whoever's taught her how to kick a footy, whether it's at North Melbourne or some of her teammates that have come across, they have executed that to perfection.
Yeah, they get sent the Sharons over to Ireland, get told, off you go, have a crack, and then they don't really get a go until they come here. So it's so impressive. There is a sour note, though. Geez, this has been around for injuries as well, hasn't it? And we saw some in this game. Ellie Hampson, one of them. Yeah,
it was a big injury. It's still unclear whether it's shoulder or collarbone for Ellie Hampson. It sort of looks like it could be either of the two, but she was in a whole lot of pain and I suspect she'll go off for scans on that. But it was the co-captain as well. The vice-captain, Nat Grider, also suffered a concussion early in this one. And it wasn't just the Lions that suffered some injuries. Vicky Wall out late in the game with an elbow and Taylor Gatt didn't play any of the final term with an ankle. And we are going to see some of the injuries start to mount across this round. The Lions, probably the shining light. Courtney Hodder, 19 disposals, 7 tackles and 6 clearances. Played a large chunk of time through the midfield and contributed all she could to that game.
Well, if we head over to the Western Derby, and it's amazing there weren't more injuries in this game because the weather was absolutely horrendous.
Well, it was sideways rain. It was, if you were there, kudos to all of the people that went to this game because there was actually quite a good crowd and these conditions were trying at times. Have a look at this boundary throw in, the way that the wind just took that. I mean, it was a 7-point win to Fremantle, so they keep their Derby streak alive, 7-0 to them. So West Coast still yet to win that elusive Western Derby. But West Coast, they probably just didn't adapt to the conditions as quickly as Fremantle did. And then Olalali, who ended up going on to win the medal, she was very, very good early in the game, had 24 disposals, 6 inside 50s, 8 intercepts and a goal. And just seeing some of the scoreboard impact that the Fremantle players had. This one, a huge mark from Mim Strom, sent the ball back inside forward 50, and Hayley Miller, this is actually a drop kick, so she didn't quite get the handle on the footy, ended up being the match winner. And awesome scenes as we see Orla Lally collect her Derby medal from Andrew Dillon, and then, as I said, still undefeated in the Western Derby since the West Coast Eagles have come into this one, the Fremantle Dockers. So important for them to snap that 3-game losing streak as well. Had a few tough weeks. North Melbourne, Brisbane had some big losses to those two teams and have sort of steadied the ship now with that win.
And Dills with the slick back hairdo in the wet, standing out there.
Not kind to anyone, that condition.
Not at all. Well, look, let's go to the Battle of the Birds now, Hawthorn and Adelaide. And Adelaide, look, they got the job done. They stop Hawthorn's unbeaten run. They used the kick mark game to great effect in the wind at Frankston.
Yeah, they did. They were able to just control the footy through marks. So Hawthorn only took 19 marks for the entire game. None of those were contested, so they weren't able to get their game going. They got beaten on the spread by the Crows. And just Dan Webster said post-match, their fundamental skill errors cost them. So they couldn't hit targets, they couldn't get their game going. And he also touched on the fact that Frankston is such a small ground, so the contested possession is really important, and Marinoff and Hatchard just got plenty of those, plenty of contested possession, plenty of possessions themselves. Marinoff with 32, laying 16 tackles as well. Hatchard, the 29, with 7 tackles of her own and a couple of goals. So those two just continue to reach new heights as the season goes on.
Don't they, Justin? The Crows did well to settle, I think, because they lost Caitlin Gould really early on in the game, a nasty wrist injury.
Yeah, she was in a whole lot of pain, not good signs for her. She went off, I think, before quarter time had even been sounded. She was already off to hospital to get scans on the wrist, so she just looked in so much pain as soon as this happened. So you'd be surprised if we saw Caitlin Gould at least next week, if not for a few more weeks in the season, depending on the severity of that, because we know if it's a scaphoid or anything like that, that'll be the end of her season. But let's cross our fingers for Caitlin Gould, but just a big key pillar in their forward line to lose.
Now, the Hawks to this point were undefeated, but they had really slim winning margins over most of the sides that they faced. So to me, they were one of those undefeated sides that probably didn't deserve to have that mantle, and you've got some concerns with their scoring.
Yeah, I think looking at that sort of, I mean, the average scores are obviously up this season, but the concern for me, first of all, inaccuracy, but a couple of those games have been completely windswept venues, so you've got to give them some leeway for that. Yep. Round 2, Frankston, and round 4 up in Cairns, where there was wind blowing absolutely everywhere. I thought they got their game back on track last week against the Saints. They were able to move the ball more freely, but for me, it's the comparison to last year. So last year, as you can see, in 2024, they averaged 7.3 goals per game, which was ranked second in the competition, only behind the Kangaroos. And we know how attacking they were last year. They've dropped down to 16th in that area, 3.6 goals a game this season. So that's the concern. Obviously, that's not on their forwards, not solely on their forwards. The ability to move the ball has changed as well. They're not able to get it out into space as much as we saw last year. But one player that could not do more for that team is Anya McDonough. Yep. Some of her second, her third, her fourth efforts this afternoon were really good. Greta Bodie still sort of, I guess, having to play a role where she's further up the ground, so having less scoreboard impact. And there's been a lot of talk about how hard it is to replace Aileen Gilroy, which I completely agree with. A meters game player, All-Australian last year, but I think they need to find another avenue to goal, because hopefully Gilroy's back next week, because she was a test, didn't quite get up this week with her hamstring. Yeah. But they need to find another avenue to goal, another dynamic forward or another key forward to be able to take marks inside forward 50, because they took a single mark inside their forward 50 this afternoon. And against teams like the Crows, you're not going to really do a whole lot of damage on the scoreboard if you can't get your game going in front of the big sticks.
Well, let's go to Icon Park now. And the Cats, well, they've made it 2 in a row, so they're on a good little run. And a couple of their forwards really put in the work too.
Yeah, it was the combination of Ash Maloney and Jackie Parry who got things going last week against Essendon as well. And their ability to either link up together between themselves or get high up the ground. Jackie Parry was fantastic in this game. 17 disposal. She took 9 marks. At one point, it looked like she was on track to beat the 14-mark benchmark set by Anne Hatchard in league history. Didn't quite get there. Had 9 score involvements. Kicked 2 goals, 3. Could have probably had a bit more of a day out if she was a bit more accurate in front of the goals. And then you compare that to Ash Maloney, 17 disposals herself, 5 marks, 9 score involvements and 1 goal, 3. Georgie Prasparkas as well. This was one of the highlights of the day, having a couple of bounces through the middle, then linking up with our dynamic duo as well. Have a look at this presence of mind from Maloney to know that both players have come to her to go one way, balk the next, then to actually use the handball. A lot of players in that situation, you think, oh, I'm in trouble here. I'm tucked up on the boundary. I just need to get this over to my teammate. I just need to throw it on the boot. So much less degree of difficulty, more degree of difficulty kicking the footy. Just knows the game so well. And if we compare their stats, I mean, adding those together, that puts you a long way ahead in the game, doesn't it? When you're getting that output from key forwards. And these aren't players that come up and play around the ball. They sit inside forward 50 or come up and link, but they're not playing a midfield role, and they're both getting 17 disposals apiece and having 9 score involvements apiece. Good luck stopping one or both of them when you're coming up against the Cats.
Yeah, they look lethal, don't they? And, to be honest, they seem like they had so much space at times, and it's good to see Geelong playing that way because I've been waiting for it. Now, we did speak about this being a round of injuries, and this isn't one that I like the look of at all. Tigers ruck Montana McKinnon, she only just came back from an ACL injury last week, looks to have another knee injury.
Yeah, this is heartbreaking regardless of severity to start with, but you just see that the contact, yes, which is rare in an ACL if we're looking down that path, but it was actually the second part where she plants her foot and then her knee collapses. And for me, the telling tale on this was how she just knew. So the ball was still in the area. She knew she had to get off the ground because she knew something wasn't quite right. Took her straight down into the rooms. Obviously didn't take any further part in that game, but it's heartbreaking. She did her ACL in the preseason last year after crossing over from the Crows to the Tigers. Couldn't play a game, obviously, with that happening. Gets back last week, puts together a performance, and then goes out of the game sort of 3/4 into this one. It's just not what you want to see for Montana McKinnon.
It's not at all, and we really hope it's not going to go that way. We wait to see what happens this week. Well, let's go to Windy Hill where the Saints have found some form, and this brings us to our Coates Player of the Round.
Yes, our Coates Player of the Round. In her 75th match, it had to be Jessie Wardlaw. She put on some performance. I haven't seen Jessie play football like this for quite some time. She's been threatening for quite a while now, but everything came together. And these weren't easy conditions for a key forward either. Windy Hill was, as we all know, windy. It was very windy, very blustery, but she looked like she was seeing the ball like an absolute beach ball out there. 21 disposals, 6 marks, 8 score involvements. Look at that. Just launching at the footy.
That's a ripper.
That's 1v3 in that pack. She comes down with it and finish it off in front of goal. That is an impressive set shot at goal in any conditions. But regardless of that, with the wind that was howling at Windy Hill, that's a really tidy performance from Jessie Wardlaw, and something that we've probably seen the Saints threaten to do. We saw them get a really good win over the Crows in round 1, and Nick Del Santo talked post-match of how proud he was of their effort and how well they played, and you sort of can sense there must be a slight element of frustration within the group as well as the coaching group, because when they put their footy together, they play some really attacking, really exciting football. They win it at the source. They get it to the outside. They use their forwards. They have a really solid defence, but they just can't seem to put it together consistently. And it's been that tale for probably the last couple of years, which is probably why Nick Del Santo at times gets really frustrated, but he can see the heights that this group can get to. And if they can be consistent, they can play some really nice football. So for them, it's finding that consistency and being able to dish out performances like that and what we saw in round 1, week in, week out.
Yep, and I think that's the next step for the Saints. And Jamie Lambert as well. Well, she was pretty ferocious today, but she might get a look from the match review for this tackle on Bonnie Toogood, who herself was back from suspension.
Yeah, well, she had a really good game, and it was this ferocity that actually sort of, I guess, made her game so memorable, Jamie Lambert, but they definitely will look at that. There's a one-arm pin, so one element of it does sort of rest in her favour that both arms weren't pinned. But for me, that secondary sling and Toogood's head making contact with the ground first is definitely something that we've seen be reviewed in the past and lead to suspensions. Toogood completed the rest of the match, and we know outcome does have a bearing on these things. So I think at the most it would probably be a week for Lambert, maybe reduced to a fine, but they'll definitely have a look at it.
Yeah, just that pinned arm. Well, let's get to the Port Melbourne game now. And geez, this was another gripping watch, wasn't it? Port Adelaide worked so hard, did a lot of damage in the final term, got the win over Melbourne by 2 points.
Yeah, and that holding off the late Demons, not only the Demons coming at them, but the Demons from the last couple of weeks. They've given up 3/4 time leads a couple of times now this season, and They had to really wrestle back a lot of this momentum late, sort of goal for goal at one point, but they were able to hold on a late goal to Kate Hoare, but couldn't quite get the job done, Melbourne, and they were handed their first loss of the season by 2 points, but it was a desperate Port Adelaide. Lauren Arnell spoke post-match of how their pressure was up, and it was on full display for everyone to see their execution of this pressure. At times they just had to go, come in, smother the ball, just make it as hard as they could for the Melbourne players, and that's exactly what they did. We've seen some really good performances from Port this season, but not probably across the 4 quarters, and their pressure, you can tell that's what they want to work on the back of, and as I said, Lauren Arnell referred to that. They were able to fully execute that for 4 quarters, make it really hard for Melbourne, and they got the reward for effort on the scoreboard as well. And I'm pleased for them because I remember a couple of weeks ago when they played North Melbourne, and it was a massive victory to North Melbourne, but I did the game and was really pleased with the way that Port continued to try and execute their skills, execute their game plan and play an expansive brand of football. And that's what they were able to actually execute across the 4 quarters as well against Melbourne. And they finally get some nourishment on that wins and loss column for executing such a game plan.
Yeah, well deserved. And look, they were happy. But if you think the Port Adelaide girls were happy, not as happy as GWS. There were absolute scenes in Canberra. They got their first win in more than a year over the Doggies.
Yeah, they were fantastic. I think the Giants just a bit more composed. That third quarter kicked a whole lot of goals. Georgia Garnett hitting the scoreboard, really classy in front of goals. And yeah, they got a run on, and the Bulldogs have a tendency. They've made most games that they've played in really scrappy affairs, but the Giants were probably one of the few teams that's been able to actually move the ball from end to end against them, namely in the third quarter. Beck Beeson was everywhere again, as she's been for most of this season. But this is the tale of the game. These scenes post-match, getting around Cam Bernasconi, and a lot of the new players at the group haven't experienced a win. It's been over a year in the making, and I just love seeing these scenes, but also what we heard from Cam Bernasconi post-match. We're going to have a listen now, and just the emotion that he alluded to.
Yeah, that's unbelievable. I'm so proud of the girls. It's been a long time from doing that, and I think the biggest thing I'm proud about is we never wavered. Like we constantly just continue to believe in what we were doing. We tweaked a few things, but yeah, when that final siren went, I definitely want to do that again. Yeah, it's pretty special. Yeah, it's funny. It's like I actually get a bit emotional when it's a round 5 win, but that's how much it means to me, how much it means to them. And I just think now that we've kind of got that pressure off us to actually get the win, now we can just remember this feeling and we'll chase it every single week.
Oh, puts a smile on your face, doesn't it?
How good is that? I love that from Cam Bernasconi, and you can feel what they've probably been up against, not only this season, but last season as well. And a footy club can be a really lonely place when you're not winning, and it doesn't matter the bond that you build. It's all about the culture, obviously, but ultimately, when the wins and losses, and the losses in particular, just start to mount up, you start to lose that sense of belief. And whether you win by 1 point or 100 points, the next day is almost always that much better when you've got the 4 points. And I'm so happy for the Giants. I'm happy that they got that win, and you can just see what it means to him as a coach, as a person, and as he sort of alluded to as well, what it means to the group and the girls and how pleased he was for the girls. So that's the moment of the week for mine, the moment of the year almost, because of the emotion that we saw from Cam Bernasconi.
Yeah, you can see what it means. And another club that's very happy with how they're tracking is Carlton. They're coming if they haven't already arrived. Their wins for this year, they've already equalled the wins that they had in total from last season, and it's only round 5.
It was a second half blitz from the Blues, wasn't it? 7 goals to just a single behind for the Gold Coast Suns. Tara Bohanna kicking 2 goals, 2 against her old side. Mim Hill being very dangerous so far this year. A nice stoppage goal from her, but their backline absolutely owned the Suns in the second half, and just their ability to defend, they got up really high. Harriet Cordner, who we'll touch on in a minute, has been massive for the Blues this season, but it's just their ability to continue to kick winning scores that's keeping them in it and keeping me watching, because I said a few weeks ago they're the box office Blues. They are. They're a team that you want to just continue to watch as they play their football, because they play such an attacking brand of football.
So a 46-point win today, that's comprehensive. What has changed between last season and this season in terms of the personnel that have come in? We've seen some fantastic young players, but how different is it?
Yeah, I just want to have a look at some of the players that they've either added to their list or got back. So this isn't extensive. They've obviously got a few others, but I want to touch on these 4 in particular. So Sophie McKay, obviously drafted as a father-daughter selection. She kicks 3 goals this week. She's kicked 6 goals for the season. Poppy Scholes is just ever reliable, isn't she? She hardly makes a mistake. She's someone that comes up when she needs to, stays back when she doesn't. Tara Bohanna, she's also kicked 6 goals for the season. So you wouldn't really think Sophie and Tara would have kicked the same amount of goals for the season. That's how good a season Sophie McKay's having. And then Aron Fitzpatrick, who was inactive last year due to her ACL, she's had 5 goals herself for the season and has been everywhere. So if we look at their average last year, so they averaged 4 goals a game for their 2024 season. In the first 5 rounds, they've put that up to 8 goals a game. So they've doubled their output in front of goals. And there's 3 players. That's the new list. Let's have a look at 3 players that I want to identify that have been really instrumental to that change. So Dana Finn, she played has played the 10 games last year. Have a look at that output, 11 disposals. She's doubled that to 22 on average this season. And the score involvements, 1.2 score involvements, 4.2 for the season, has averaged a whole lot more clearances as well. And she kicked 1 goal 2 from her 10 games last year, kicked 3 goals 4 so far in the 5 games this season. Harriet Cordner, though, averaging the 12 disposals up to 16, but her marking has been on display, doubled her output. And Karen Harrington, who was basically the All-Australian by how far a few seasons ago, and sort of a few younger players have come up and taken that mantle off her, but this season she's back to some of her best form. Not in the ruck, playing in front of the footy. She gets up high. She's able to, we know how quick she is for such a tall player. 8 disposals has gone to the 13 disposals, and her ability to stay involved in the contest, the score involvements, 1.5 to 3.6. So they're 4 players that have brought something to the team for this year that are new, and then 3 players that have just found some of their best footy so far in 2025.
What is in the water there? They're getting the best out of everyone at the moment, aren't they? There was a bit of an ugly moment on the field, though, during this game involving Neve McLaughlin. Now, it probably won't be a suspension, but it isn't a good look.
Yeah, I think we'll come back to this phrase, you can't do that, but you just can't do that. You can't do that on a football field. I know there's a bit going on, there's a bit of afters, but for me, it's how ugly this could have been with, we know the twisting of a knee, what that can lead to. So I think she'll probably cop a fine for that, for a trip, but you can't do that on a football field, Neve. Get that out of your game. You can't grab someone by the leg and not let them go. It was a free kick, but lucky not to get away with worse on the Carlton's injury front.
Yeah, the twisting knee, it just gives me the shivers these days. Now, there was a selly that we do want to point out for the skipper, Karen Peterson, or I should say the former skipper.
Yeah, well, this is a brilliant moment from Lila Keck. Knew exactly where the former skipper was situated in the little balcony that the players sit on at Icon Park, and touching moment, the love heart, and then the baby celebration for the new birth of the Carlton ex-skipper. Well, not really ex-skipper. She's stood down. She's inactive for this season post-giving
still
birth.
in the ranks.
But Karen Peterson, I hope she enjoyed that.
Yeah, little baby Max. It's nice to see those moments on the field, isn't it? Well, let's go to Vic Park where, Kate, I know you were sitting on the hill for this one. Another upset. The Pies, they've knocked off the Swans' first loss of the season.
Yeah, this was huge. So the Pies kept the Swans, one of the most attacking teams in the competition, goalless till half time. And the Swans coming into round 5 had kicked the second most goals in the competition behind the Kangaroos. And Kalinda Howarth kicked 3. They owned the contest. So they were plus 19 at contest, plus 11 at clearance as well. But not only did they own the inside, they owned the outside, plus 53 uncontested possessions. And I said a couple of weeks ago when the Pies just narrowly lost to Melbourne that Sam Wright had given the competition a blueprint on how to defend Melbourne and how to make their life really difficult. Well, he's done the same now for the Swans, because their ability to move it, to make it really wide, but take away that uncontested game from Sydney and go one-on-one, go genuinely one-on-one and make things hard, make them go long down the line. And I think this will be a loss for Sydney that teaches them so much, and it's a good time of the season for them to have it, because I've been absolutely loving the footy they've been dishing out. And at times when things are going so well, you don't need to find a second method because your first method is working. And they were forced to find a different way. They didn't quite have the answers, but with Scott Gowans, he will review that game. He'll come up with a game plan that if another team takes that away from them, they all know where they need to go from here and how to get the game back on their terms.
Well, Scott Gowans, he spoke after the match, as all the coaches do, and he seemed to point to Sydney's slow starts as something they need to look at.
Well, we could start by just turning up and getting a good start in the game. That'd be a nice thing to do. We've changed it up this week to try and get a bit different look pre-game, but still disappointed with the way we start. And
it's interesting. I think that's the closest to grumpy that we see Scott Gowans.
Turning up helps.
Turning up would be nice. So a little bit of a drive-by, but I think if we have a look at some of the numbers of the goals that they've conceded early in games, especially in the last 3 rounds, it's definitely been a concern for the Swans. So their inability to kind of defend or to wrestle back momentum, we've seen 2 of those games end up in wins, obviously, but their inability to kind of wrestle that back at the start or to start strong has been a concern. So I think I've played in teams, and multiple teams that you play in, if you can't get off to a good start, it's really hard to work out what it is, whether it's the warm-up, you're not intense enough, whether the girls aren't dialed in, and you try and work out what it is, but ultimately it's something that's actually really hard to change.
Now, I'm not going to say goal of the year because we have a goal of the year every week on this program at the moment.
Well, goal of the week then.
Sorry. Yeah, let's go with goal of the week. Montana Ham on the run. This was pretty spectacular.
This was really spectacular, and Montana is just starting to show how good she is as a footballer, but just this ability to stay engaged, stay in the chain, 1 handball, 2 handball, gets it back. The finish itself is good enough for goal of the week or goal of the year, however you want to phrase it. But the thing I love, the Swans didn't have the game that they wanted. You see the score there, 6-1. I love that, yes, it was a phenomenal goal. Could have gone overs with the celebration, but you can see how much of a competitor that she is. Yep, good goal. We have so much work still left to do in this game to get back to even being competitive. Let's get back to halfway and let's see if we can go again and get something happening in this game. So shout out to Montana Ham for her competitiveness, her professionalism, also the skills that were on display in that play.
Yeah, incredible goal. But it was a tough day for Lexi Hamilton, who will not only probably be in trouble with the MRO, but ended up injured.
Yeah, I think just back on that phrase, you can't do this.
Oh, dear.
To Lauren Butler, so the palm off to start with, and then the swinging arm. I don't think they'll like to see that at the MRO. She won't face weeks for that at all, obviously. It's a strike.
You can't do that.
You can't do that. You absolutely can't do that. But unfortunately suffered some injury woes of her own, a chest injury, and Julie O'Sullivan as well went down with a knee, which we're waiting to hear some updates from. And Britt Benici, a big concern for the Pies. Looked like she pinged her calf late in the game, was very sore after, so we'll be keeping a watch. Obviously, someone they can ill afford to lose at the Collingwood Magpies with how good she is in their midfield.
Oh, plenty of upsets. We love to see it. Kate, that's round 5 done.
Well, it was the rounds of upsets. Let's see if it continues. But yeah, it's been a very good round of football and sort of levelled the playing field a little bit for some of the teams, except for North Melbourne.
Yeah, we love to see it, except for North Melbourne. Oh, we do love to see that as well.
Oh,
Thank
yes.
you, everyone, for tuning in. That's the wrap for this week. Enjoy the week in footy.